Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfound Live for January 6th of 2025. So the first live show for this year. Excited about that. I am here. I'm not feeling 100%, but I'm here anyway. And I'm guessing maybe some of you don't feel 100% this evening either, but you're here. So I might as well be here too. And we'll get into that in a little bit. As you are, of course, watching tonight, give this video a thumbs up, this live show a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And I'd really appreciate that, even though the podcast itself is on a hiatus. I'm hoping that when I feel a bit better, that get back to posting some videos and some things, but it's been a little bit of a struggle here getting work done, but writing things and recording things is a little tough right at this second to concentrate, but that's what's going on. And but once again, as you are watching tonight, give this a thumbs up, subscribe, tell your friends and family about this YouTube channel. And of course, if you're new, then if you're new to Unfound, then me not uploading any particular new stuff recently maybe is not that big of a deal, because we have 8 years worth of content that new people can peruse. And so there's that. As I've stated, maybe the last couple live shows, I'm not sure if this will go the full 2 hours or not. It will depend on how I feel and how long I can. Of course, I have an itinerary, an outline that I always bring. Since the beginning, I never just show up and wing it. But we'll see how long the content goes for tonight. Hopefully, it will get us through the full 2 hours. If not, I have to admit, I'm not going to worry too much about it. As you can see in the headline for the live show tonight, I want to talk a little bit about Missy Bevers. I know it's not even that time of year. Of course, she was murdered in Texas in April. I forget what year it was, but it's been a while now. And usually I talk about her murder because it's certainly a unique one around the anniversary of her murder. But there was something that went on while I was in Pennsylvania seeing my dad for a couple weeks that kind of put her murder and her unsolved murder on my mind. So I want to talk to you about that. I also want to talk about these 2 attacks, because they're crimes too, that occurred on New Year's Eve. Of course, one in New Orleans, where that guy ran his truck through the group of people, killing several. And then I also want to talk about this guy who blew up a Tesla Cybertruck in my former hometown of Las Vegas at the Trump Plaza Hotel there. And in each one of them, I'm avoiding the politics of it. I don't care who's going to be president, who was president. I don't care about any of that. We're going to stick to another aspect of both of those attacks. Just some ideas that have popped up in my head. Once again, no politics will be involved in any of this. So there you go. And then also, given what I've been living with for over the past month, I have to admit, given that I'm always looking to learn about disappearances, even when I'm not feeling that great, and even though maybe a little while before a new episode of the podcast comes out. I'm still thinking about disappearances. I'm still theorizing on them. I'm still looking for new ideas and everything. And certainly what I have experienced over the past month, I have to talk about the role that sleep or a lack of sleep or the medications that you can take, whether over the counter or through prescriptions. And is this something that we need to think about when the concern or disappearances that have, certain people, and there are certain facts. And I think I want to get into that a little bit because I've had a lot of time to think about this and struggling with my own issues. And by the way, if anybody's wondering, I am I'm sleeping better. I would say that it's getting a little better week by week. I'm certainly better than I was a month ago. I'm better than I was a couple weeks ago. But I've signed up to get some professional help over the internet, where I'm going to be talking to a sleep expert on a weekly basis. And they're going to put me on a sleep plan. And I'm really looking forward to this. I'm doing this now on my own right now, but given what I've been looking into, and I've been listening to podcasts about insomnia. I've been watching videos about something called cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. And all of these different people are saying that this is something that, although you can do it on your own, and I have an app on my phone and everything, it's best to have a professional who is guiding you through it. And it's something that does not involve drugs or anything. It's about keeping on a sleep schedule. And so given that I've been doing that, and given my work for the last 8 years, I have to believe that there are some disappearances that are firmly anchored in sleep issues or sleep medication, things like that. So I'll get to that surely before we all are done here tonight. So let's see who is in here first of all. Karen. Hello, Karen. And by the way, I'm not using the microphone, and I'll get into, you're probably looking at the background and saying, well, this is also a new background, Ed. What is this? I'll explain that in a moment. Hello, Karen. Hello, Amy. Happy New Year to you, Amy. Hello, Sarah. Good to see you. Kathy, Suzanne, Lisa, Dee, what's going on? Nephew Charles, good to see you. Happy New Year to you. Leanne, what's up? Good to see you. Lisa, I missed last week. I was in New Orleans, but got out of there New Year's Eve in the daytime. I expect New Orleans is on the agenda tonight. It is. And like I said, I'm staying away from politics and terrorism and everything else. I'm going to look at this from a different point of view. Leanne, Missy Beavers' murder happened April 18th, 2016. Thank you for that, Leanne. I'm going to be getting into that here in a bit. Just something that really came across my mind by accident, kind of. You are, Sarah. Sarah, yes, you are here. Hello, Neighborly. Hello, Brad. Have you tried CBN? I'm not taking anything, Brad. I'm not taking anything. I refuse. Amy, melatonin works for me for good, for being proactive. Thank you, Amy. The program that I'm on, even though the people that run it are licensed to prescribe medication and everything, this is really a program that I'm on that's all about retraining your brain and the relationship that your body and mind has with your bed. It's not about taking drugs and knocking people out and things, although that can be done. This is something totally different. Once again, the program that I'm on, that I'm going to adhere to the bitter end, is called Cognitive Behavior Therapy for Insomnia. A lot of videos and podcasts about it. In fact, there's a free app that you can get about it on your phones. Hello, Brian. What's going on with you? Hello, Marcy, Ferry, Clarice. You know what I think of when maybe you've gotten that a lot in your life, Clarice. Of course, that connection with that name to Silence of the Lambs. Hey, Fishing, what's going on? Love the show. Thank you, Fishing. How are you? Clarice, I'm very excited about tonight's show. Well, me too, Clarice. I hope I don't disappoint you. So a couple things. Yes, even though it may not look like it, I am back in Florida, and I am in my condo. But when I got back here the end of last week, I started looking at my place. And of course, I've been spending a lot of time in here because given what's going on with me, I'm even more of a homebody than usual. That I thought, maybe I need to rearrange some things here in my condo. And what probably put that in my mind is my dad gave me this leather chair. And it was able to fit in the back seat of my car, along with kind of the thing you put your feet on, the stool or whatever. And I had to find a place for it. And so I found a place for it, but in the process of doing that, I thought, you know what, I can move. I think I can make this space out here where the couch is, where the TV is, where the video games are and everything. I think that I can make this a more efficient space. So what you're seeing me with this background, is I'm sitting in the spot where the video games used to be. Remember, I used to sit there, and over here is where the video games would be. I am now sitting in that space. So remember, before, the sliding glass door that looked out on the Gulf was behind me. Well, now it's over there. So before I was facing east, now I'm facing north. And the table that you couldn't see, but it used to be right beside me in the old location, that is what this computer is now sitting on. And so I've moved it down the wall. I've moved those video games out of there. Remember Pac-Man, you can see it in the background. I moved those out of the way, slid this table down, and now it's sitting right next to where the TV is. The couch is still in the same place. It's back here, but it's been moved to the side to make room for the chair. And the video games got moved over to where I used to do the live show from. So they're over there now. So I did that today, and there's going to continue to be some changes. So I have this big empty space now between this table and like where the counter is. And I'm going to move my keyboard that I have in my bedroom, a big 88 key touch sensitive keyboard. I'm going to move it out here and put it in that space right there. And what also has put this in my mind goes back to this program, the sleep program that I'm on, that you're not supposed to do anything in your bedroom except sleep. It's very, very, very important. So no watching TV in your bedroom, no working in your bedroom, even if you're not even sitting on the bed or lying on the bed. The only thing you go into the bedroom for is to sleep. I guess it's fine to walk through it to get to the bathroom, even though usually when I'm out here, I use the guest bathroom. The only reason you're in the bedroom is to sleep. That's one of the things that you need that gets into your mind. Well, Ferry, we're keeping this PG, but that's the idea. That's the idea, Ferry. And it's to build the connection between no eating. No, yeah, Brian, no eating in the bedroom, period. Zero. No talking on the phone, no computers. Well, like I said, let's keep it PG. What do you say, everybody? What you're trying to do is build up a strong connection between your bedroom and sleep. That's what you're trying to do. And it's scientifically documented. So I've actually unplugged. I have a TV and a DVR, whatever, in my bedroom, unplugged. I can't take them out of there because I have no place to put them. But they're unplugged now. And so because I do, of course, play my keyboard once in a while and mess around with, of course, with my singing and everything, I do some things where I sing and I have the keyboard there. I can't do that now. So I have to take the keyboard out of there so I can, of course, still play it. I can't be in the bedroom and play it because, once again, subconsciously, your mind then starts equating other things besides sleep with your bedroom. This is all scientifically documented. Look it up for yourselves. Cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. And, this comes from a belief. It's kind of been going on like 20, 25, 30 years now that this, maybe even longer than that this has been a very popular scientific, new theory when it comes to sleep and why people sleep and how they sleep. And it's rooted in the idea that a lot of the sleep problems that we have as humans have nothing to do with, with stress, although stress can be certainly a motivator, certainly can play a role. But one of the big reasons that a lot of people have sleep problems is because they do too many things in their bedrooms. That, the TVs, you eat, you do work, you watch TV, you talk on your phone. Of course, if you're in a relationship, you're lying in bed, you're talking to each other, you're doing too many things there. And eventually what happens is the relationship between your bed and sleep subconsciously start to separate. And that's where the sleep problems start. And that's one of the ways that insomnia can start. And so once again, in part of redoing this out here, because I kind of noticed I had some wasted space anyway. I thought, I think I can rearrange this and I can get the keyboard out here. And then that's one, that's like the last major thing that's in there. So, for example, I don't charge my phone in my bedroom anymore. I don't bring any of my computers into my bedroom anymore. The only reason that I go into my bedroom since I came back from Pennsylvania is to walk in there, either to go to bed or once in a while when I use that bathroom or go to take a shower. That's it. So, like I said, I've been doing some rearranging, probably because I'm in the mood. Probably going to be doing some rearranging over in the other bedroom too, even though I never use it. So once again, you're wondering, well, what are we looking at back here? Well, this is just a different angle of my condo. What you can see, or maybe some of you who really way go back to the day. There's remember the Johnny Depp picture that also used to be in the back when I lived in Madeira Beach? There it is right there. And you go back there and then to the right, that is where my bedroom is. So that's what's something that has kept me busy, I guess you could say. And it's going to keep me at least a little busy for the next couple days to get everything the way that I want it. As far as how my sleep is going, I'm getting about not quite 5 hours of sleep, and I'm going to bed at about 2 a.m. My body wakes up at about 7:15 a.m., and within that, probably I'm waking up a couple times for no particular reason for a total of like a half hour or something like that. Not ideal, but it keeps me functional. But that's better than I was doing, at least initially when I got up to my dad's, and certainly better than I was sleeping a month ago. So there you go. What's everybody saying here? Can you take, let's see here. Deborah, thank you for the super sticker, the $10, Deborah. Thank you very much. You are very generous there. Thank you so much, Deborah. Really appreciate it. Ferry asked me, am I moving? I'm not moving. I'm just moving stuff around within my condo. Just trying to make it a little more efficient, more user-friendly, Ferry, but I'm not moving. And even if I were to move out of here, I couldn't move until like April anyway, because my lease here, contract here runs like May to May. So even if I was thinking about moving, I couldn't think about doing that to the end of April anyway. No eating in the bedroom. Nope, Brian. I'm not getting into that. Ferry says that's pretty much how I was raised, so I still do that regarding the bedroom. Murray says I like that connection. Brian says, can you take naps? Naps are totally forbidden in this program, Brian. Naps are bad. If you want to sleep well at night, naps are bad. This is the program that I'm on. So when I wake up at 7:15 in the morning, no naps, no 5-minute snoozes until 2 a.m. It all makes sense in the end if you were to look into it. So, but no naps are, if you want to have a good sleep pattern and you want to sleep well and naps are the opposite of that. Once again, what I'm following. No naps, Deborah says. That's right. No naps. I was having sleepless, restless sleep. I got a weighted blanket for Christmas. It's been working great. I'm glad that's working for you, Ferry. It's probably more of kind of a mental thing. I live in a studio, so that's an issue. That could be an issue, Amy. Marcia says, makes sense. I was not aware of that fact, Ed. Yeah, well, now you are. RK says, that's why I sleep in a capsule, complete dedicated sleep space. Mrs. Dracula calls it a coffin, but I know better. I don't know what to read into that. Clarice says, very true. My husband, PTSD, and the specialist specifically recommended the same treatment. Yeah. And in fact, the Clarice, the app that I'm using on my phone that is free, it's based on cognitive behavior therapy, and it comes from the VA, the Veterans Administration in the United States. So there you go. Marcy says, yep, I go back to the beginning of your career. Deborah, sounds like me now. You mean as far as your sleep patterns, Deborah? No alcohol, plenty of exercise. That's right, Clarice. So I'm not a drinker anyway, but I have been going to the gym. Every day I was at my father's. I was out in the cold walking for about 40 minutes. And since I've come back here to Florida, I've been down at the gym. So it's still part of my routine, but I got to get there in the morning. If I wait to the afternoon to go to the gym, it's not going to happen. That's just the way it is with me and everything right now. I did drive back, and, it's one of those weird things where I haven't been getting the sleep that I wanted. But on Wednesday night, last Wednesday night, I slept for like 4 hours or something. Got up, left my dad's at 8 a.m., and got here at about 1:15 in the morning. There were some delays. There were some traffic backups. Drove straight through on 4 hours sleep. Went to bed. So I got home at 1:15 in the morning. Went to bed at 2 a.m. So 45 minutes later, once again, got 4.5 hours sleep into Friday and just continued moving. It's crazy. It's one of those things. It's so weird. What's been going on over the last month is so weird. But I was able to drive the whole way to Florida nonstop on 4 hours sleep. And then the next sleep that I got was also only 4 hours. And so Friday night, Saturday night, last night, once again in that 5-hour range. So you're looking at me right now. I've gotten, I don't know, 20, maybe 28 hours of sleep over the last 5 days or something. This is what it looks like. It's no fun, but I'm pretty sure I'm on the right path. As it goes with this program, it gets worse before it gets better. Everybody, any expert on this will tell you at the beginning, when you take it seriously, your sleep is going to get worse before it's going to get better, but it is going to get better. It's going to get better. So there you go. What else is going on? Steelers stink, but they're in the playoffs. I watched their game over at my brother's on Saturday night. That was fun. I went over there. And looks like they'll be playing again on Saturday night against the Ravens. I expect them to lose. But what are you going to do? So those are some of the things that have been going on with me over the past week. I hope everybody had a great New Year's. As you would imagine, Dad and I just stayed at home, did not go anywhere. I did, being that I was staying up till 2 a.m. anyway, I was up well past midnight. Usually, I will tell you, under regular circumstances, I'm usually asleep before New Year's comes around. But for once, I watched like all the New York, the New Year's celebrations and the singers and dancers and musicians. For once, I watched all that stuff. I can't even remember the last time I watched all that stuff. So that was kind of neat, I guess. And then, like I said, last Thursday, drove back here to Florida. Clarice, I'd be interested to know if since your husband is using that, how long has he been on it and how is that going for him? And there it is, man. As I'm asking, you're typing. Ed, there are days when my husband is up for 37, 40 hours straight. I understand your frustration. Yeah, that hasn't happened to me in a while, Clarice. That happened early on, where over the course of 3 days, I didn't sleep 2 of those nights early on, going back to like November 25th, something like that. So I know what that's like. That sucks. And I'm hoping he, the thing is, Clarice, if he's following that, what I talked about, the cognitive behavior therapy, and he's following that app, that stuff should eventually go away. And he should be thinking about hooking up with a specialist like I'm going to be going. I have my first meeting with a specialist next Monday to get that handled, Clarice. There is a website that's dedicated to sleep doctors who specialize in CBTI. So you might want to look that up. And you don't have to drive anywhere. That you can do this over the internet. So Clarice, you might want to, because that's no good. I mean, that's miserable. Being up like that. And of course, it's very dangerous too. Maybe needing sleep, 8 hours sleep is a little overrated, but we all know that not sleeping well for an extended period of time, like for months, years, that's your risk for all sorts of bad things goes way up. Way, way, way up. And it's best to catch this stuff like when I'm doing it within a month. But there are people who live with insomnia and only get 3 hours of sleep and try to do this and try to do that and try to do medications and everything else for years. And, they go 10 years. Like, I can't imagine doing this for 10 years. I just can't imagine it. Clarice says he's been doing much better as he's committed to the program. That's fantastic. Got to make the commitment. Even if he's only getting 6 hours eventually of sleep, Clarice, as long as it's solid, good sleep, as long as it's deep sleep, don't get caught up in the hours, just how he feels when he gets up in the morning. That's what matters. Don't get caught up in the hours part of it. Get caught up in the how many hours straight did he sleep? And when he gets up, how does he feel? It's the most important part. All right, let's move on. Let's get to the true crime part of it. I think it's become, over the course, you please check that out. Clarice, if you need more information, you want to talk about this further, email me, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And being that I've been reading and doing so much regarding this because I want this out of my life as fast as possible, I'd be happy to, give you some information and help you and your husband out like that. Yeah. So Clarice, I got it. Gotcha. All right. So email me if you want to talk about this further, Clarice. I'd be happy to do that. So, it's weird. This podcast, this live show, it's supposed to be true crime, but how much over the time have I talked about like disc golf? I haven't thrown a disc, by the way, since October. Disc golf and all these other topics that kind of weave their way into this live show. Now the thing is sleep. Who would have thunk it? I could have never guessed this. All right, but I'm serious. For anybody if you are listening to this, if you're watching this tonight, if you're watching this as a replay, if you have sleep issues, do not just accept them. There's no reason to accept them in your life. And I'm not saying you have to, I would avoid the drugs, the Ambiens and the Trazodones and all that. I would look up cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. Just go to the App Store, whether iPhone or Android phone, go to your App Store, find it. It's free. It's a good place to start. And once you learn about that, there's podcasts out there, there's YouTube channels. There are people out there who can help, and it's not based in drugs. And really, these people aren't even that expensive. And I think that you can get yourself on the path to sleeping better again, but it's difficult. I'm here to tell you it's difficult, especially when you're not allowed to nap. You nap, it's like eating chocolate and cheesecake and drinking soda and everything while you're on a diet. That's what napping is. So, but there are people out there. If you're not sleeping well, don't accept it. But don't go to the drugs either. There are people out there that can put you on the right path. It's all based in science. All right? Look it up. Cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. But like I said, it's no treat. Even the specialists, the experts on it say it's going to work, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the worse it is at the beginning, the more you're probably going to recover. If it's not really difficult at the beginning, then you're not doing it right. And that's where I am right now. All right, let's talk about Missy Bevers. Now, why am I talking? It's January. It's going to be, 9 years in April. I don't do a murder podcast. I do a disappearance podcast. So why am I just kind of pulling this out of there? Even though it's a very well-known murder here in the United States. Here's what happened that got me thinking about her murder. As all of you know, you're welcome, Sarah. I was up seeing my dad for 2 weeks, and he goes to a church. It's a Christian church, but it's not like, it's not Catholic, it's not Presbyterian. It's like one of these non-denominational Christian churches, but it has a huge congregation. It's a huge building. When my mother's alive, she and my dad both went to this church together. My dad continues to go there by himself. I'm not so much into that, but he goes and he really enjoys it. And he's gotten to know people there. And like I said, I don't know, maybe 15 years now that he's been going there. Well, the church, like I said, it's a huge building. And it's very much like, you have to remember, when I grew up, I was raised Roman Catholic. And I started out as an older boy, and I eventually became the church organist because I could play the piano. That was my job in high school. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but in high school, at least back in the 1980s, kids got jobs even though they were in school. Some would work, delivering pizzas or whatever else. I was the church organist at my church. It was called Assumption Church. And I did that my sophomore, junior, senior year until I graduated high school. I played the organ, all the masses, 3 masses per weekend. And then if there were like weddings, I would play the music for the weddings, people getting married in the church. That's what I did. And I'm not a very good Catholic now. You know that I don't even really talk about religion and things, but that's what I did. So I know a little bit about working at a church, going into a church, being in a church a long time, even though that's like 35 years ago. But, with the Catholic Church, though, that I went to, it was church and that was about it. But we know these days, churches, they have, especially these big ones, they have all sorts of things going on. All sorts of things, get-togethers and clubs and things for like little kids and everything. The church that I went to had none of that. None of that. Well, the church that my dad has been going to for the last 15 years is like that. Has a lot of things going on. You go in there and you go into the church and it's more like you're in like a school. There's hallways, there's classrooms, there's a variety of rooms and doors, and it's a big building. That was not the church that I was in. That's not what I'm used to as a Roman Catholic, being raised Roman Catholic as a kid. Well, you probably all realize, of course, all of you out there who are familiar with Missy Bevers' murder, is that's the kind of church where she was murdered. It was that kind of church. You look at that church where she was murdered, it's kind of the same thing. Of course, remember the now well-known video of whoever killed her walking around and going these hallways, and there's different doors, and there's little rooms and classrooms and all these, there's a kitchen and all this stuff. That church there is very similar to the church that my dad goes to now and has been going to for a while. And I've only gone to church with him a few times, and it's been a while. Well, what happened was we were out one day, and, my dad gives to the church. And I don't know if he forgot to, I don't know what exactly that, I really did not really go in depth with him. But he had a check that he wanted to give to the church. And we drove over to the church to drop it off. But the thing is, I don't even remember what day it was last week. It must have been like Monday or Tuesday or something in the morning. There was no one there. Once again, huge sprawling property. There wasn't one car in the parking lot, but the church was unlocked. And see, this is something that's always, given that I worked in a church for 3 years, and I know that I'm not saying that all churches are never locked, but locking up a church is like the antithesis of, and I'm just going to stick to Christianity because that's the religion I know the best, even though, like I said, as far as my religious beliefs, I believe that Jesus walked the earth, but that's about as far as I want to take it. Locking churches up is like the antithesis of Christianity. The church is supposed to be there for anybody and every time. That doesn't mean a service is going on. That doesn't mean that the priest or the pastor or whoever is going to be there when somebody shows up. But churches are supposed to be, a refuge. If you're having a tough day and you're going by your church, you can stop in there. It's unlocked. You can go into one of the pews if you want to do a little praying, a little, reflection, do whatever. That's what churches are for. On top of, having the actual masses and confession if you're Roman Catholic and all the other stuff that goes along with being a member of some church, whether it's Christianity or whatever else. I just think, I don't automatically think locked buildings when I think churches. So we went over to his church, and guess what? It was unlocked. And he didn't want to get out and, take the check inside because it was a little bit of a walk and everything. And so it was cold out. He goes, Ed, just take it in there. And he told me where to go. You go in this door and then you take a left and you'll see it. And so I walk in, the door is open. It's unlocked. You go inside and it's just like you're walking through a closed school. And I eventually found where there was like a little slot where, people who could stop by if they wanted to give something to the church, there's a little slot, put it in there, and there you go. That's all I had to do. But in being in there is what got me thinking about the murder of Missy Bevers. Why? Because that church was locked. It was locked. We now know that the person who killed her, whoever man or woman, broke into that church to do what was done there. And it's obvious that Missy did not know that the person was in there. And Missy had her own keys. She had worked something out with the pastor, whatever they call the person who leads the church there, worked something else out there. She could lead this yoga class at the church, and she had a key. And so the killer had broken into the church from like some other place that Missy didn't see. Missy pulls up. She gets her stuff out of her truck. She goes up to the front door. She unlocks that door. She goes in there, and that's when she gets murdered. That's the sequence of events. But in thinking about that, in being that I was kind of like, am I going to sneeze or am I not going to sneeze? And I should state right now, it's been very windy here. It's been a little chilly. That doesn't help my sinuses either. So on top of being tired, I got a sinus thing going on too. So there's that. But here I am. I'm walking into this church, my dad's church, totally unlocked. And so I start thinking about that church in Texas. Was there a reason that it was locked? Was there a reason? Was there a reason that it wasn't unlocked like so many churches are? Once again, for the reason that churches, and I realize there can be vandalism and all these things. I get that. And that happens. But my perception of churches in the United States is a lot of them remain unlocked. I don't think that my Roman Catholic church that I worked in as a high schooler was ever locked. Anybody could go in there at any time and you could light a candle or do whatever else. So the first thing was, why was that church locked? What I go to is, were they having issues? Was the church locked because was it having, for example, vandalism issues? Was it locked up because they were having theft issues? Was it locked up because there had been some sort of threats being leveled against that church or people who run the church or something? These are the things that come to mind. Now, it very well may be somebody who goes to that church is going to email me tonight or tomorrow or something and say, hey, I'm a member of that church and it's always locked. Well, my response, if you're thinking about doing that, if you're out there listening to this right now, the question I'm going to ask back to you is, why is it locked? You may say, well, it's always locked, but why? Most churches aren't locked up. Yes, there may be locks on the doors and there may be keys, but that doesn't mean you have to lock it up. So that's the first part. The second part that came to my mind, and like I said, I was only in that church for like a minute in Pennsylvania. The second part was that it's clear to me, even my dad at 88 years old knows where the money is kept in that church. And like you said, here's what you do, Ed. You go in, you go to the left, you're going to see like this mail slot kind of thing, and just put the envelope in there. And, you know, he goes, oh, I've done this many times before. Just go, this is what you do. All right, and I did that. I guess what I'm saying is, it's obvious to me then that this person who broke into this church, if the motivation was money, this person is not a member of that church. Why? Because we know that person went in there and was kind of walking around, going here, going there, doing this, doing that. A person who actually was a member of the congregation of that church would have known exactly where to go. Just like my 88-year-old dad would know to go where, you know, because what do? To use my dad's church as an example, of course, it's not locked, but if you're going to go in there and you're a member of the congregation and you're having money problems, and you think, hey, I have an idea. I'm going to go over to my church and steal the money out where these people are putting in the money in the slot. You're going to go right to that location and try to rip that box open or whatever it was and try to get at that money, cash checks, maybe forged signatures or whatever else that people do, when they're desperate. You're not going to go in there and just wander around. You're going to know exactly where the money is. It's obvious to me this killer did not know that. So it would lead me to believe, and I realize there's still a question of, well, did the person break into that church is some sort of ruse? It looks like a break-in, but really the person was looking to kill Missy. Was this like, once again, was the person there to kill Missy, or was the person just got caught in the act? I wonder. This is still something that's unclear. I will tell you, I think that Missy was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what I think. I think the person who broke into that church had no idea that Missy was going to be showing up to do that yoga that morning. And I realize people think differently, fine by me. But this is, like I said, two things that occurred to me. One, why was the church locked when my perception is that most churches aren't locked, especially if they're out in the country? I realize that, if you got a church in the bad part of a city, I can maybe see that. But this church was like sitting out there by itself. Kind of in the same area where my dad's church is, except his is in Pennsylvania. And so I'm not sure that locking it up, is really protecting it against anything, unless there had been something going on. And then the second thing, like I said, if this person was a member of the congregation, that person would have gone right to the spot where the money is. Now, I see Kathy say, Missy killed early Monday morning, offerings collected on Sunday morning, not deposited yet. Yeah, I think that's exactly my point there, Kathy. That people who, are going to do this are going to know if they know the building and everything, they're going to go right to that spot. They're not going to fake it. They're not going to pretend like they don't know the interior, because they know the more time they spend inside the church, the more likely it is they're going to get caught. So if they know where the money is, they're going to go there. Now, they may be stopped. They may not be able to get past the door, or the safe deposit box, or whatever it is just too tough, or whatever else. But they're going to go directly to that spot, just like when robbers go to banks, they immediately go to the tellers, because that's where the money is. They don't hang around, the front door or anything. They go right to the tellers. They go right to the tellers, and of course, sometimes they go for the vault, and sometimes that's a mistake, as we learned in Point Break. So these are just a couple things that came to mind, and I have to admit, I didn't even, as we were driving over there, as my dad and I were driving over there to do this wasn't even on my mind until I stepped foot inside the church. And I was like, so this is probably what it would have been like that early morning when Missy Beavers got murdered. Nobody in the church. And you got this big sprawling campus of a church and everything. And so that's why my wheels started, the wheels in my mind started to turn. Amy says vandalism could be. Sarah says, I was raised Roman Catholic too. All right, maybe we can share stories, Sarah. And D says, now we all know about my religious leanings. That's funny. D. Rockford, imagine Unfound covering his disappearance. I'm not sure who you'd get for that interview. Who are you talking about? Rockford. Maybe I'm covering his disappearance. You mean his capital H as in Jesus's, Rockford? Now that is funny. Kathy, I believe person was casing other business down the road first. Missing wrong place, wrong time. Rockford adds, I agree on wrong place, wrong time. I must add that we have pretty good evidence that a car appeared to be casing the area. I remember that. I regularly attend mass, but have no idea where money is kept. All right, Rockford. I guess what I'm saying regarding my dad's church is they have something specifically set up for that. They actually have a specific slot that if you're in the area, the church is unlocked, and you want to stop in and give them something monetarily, there's a place to do that. And it's right there. It's very easy to do. Kathy says, Rockford, we are on the same wavelength. Marty, there's Marty now. Yeah, Rockford says, you got it. The disappearance of Jesus. That is funny. Hello, Amelie. What's going on with you? Good to see you. Everybody now saying hi to Marty. Marty gets in here 53 minutes late, and everybody's so excited to see him. That is funny. So that is my insight into Missy Bevers' murder. I think at this point, I need to know more about the church itself and what was going on at the church at the time that has nothing to do with Missy. What was going on in the leadership? What was going on with its finances? What was going on with anything in the congregation? Anything. And this is where I am on her murder. I've convinced myself that that person was in this clothed person with the battle gear on, the police battle gear on, was in there because of something against the church, and Missy was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so to understand that, to further flesh that out, I'd need to know more about that. Now, it very well may be that there are congregants, people who go to that church maybe into this day who said, well, there's nothing going on. I'd like to hear that for myself. And then the second part of it is, if this were somebody within the church, this wouldn't have been, the expedition, the treasure hunt or whatever, fishing expedition that it seemed that person was on in the several minutes before Missy ever showed up. Just some insights. Those are my insights. Sarah says, my church in my area is always locked up when there's no mash in session. That's interesting. Marty, I knew too long, been crazy busy. Yeah, and you weren't in the think tank last night either, Marty. Kathy, per my experience, most churches are kept locked if no employees are there. Yeah, okay. I don't know. Like I said, my perception is that a lot of churches out there are unlocked. And like I said, my dad and I were at the church. There was not one car in that parking lot. There was nobody there. So, and like I said, I realize there's going to be certain churches in certain locations where they have to do that. Just didn't seem to me that this church, where it was situated kind of out of town and everything, they would have had to really worry about much. Brian, I agree with the church's situation on how they run it. Thanks, Brian. Okay. Marty, I just don't believe Missy Beavers' killer was going there intended to kill her. It seemed like he really wasn't experienced at all. Sarah says her church is in a high crime area. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I'm not even saying these are any new ideas here. I'm guessing these things have been said by many people over the last 8 years. But being that I got to go into a church when nobody was there and it was unlocked, just like I said, knew immediately that this is something that I needed to bring up tonight. Clarice says, I believe Missy was targeted. It's fine by me, Clarice. That's not the way I lean, but that's fine. Rockford says, there is locked, which is one thing, but even if locked, how hard are most of them to get into? Well, obviously not hard, being that person, whoever it was, successfully did that. I guess, Rockford. Leanne, hello, Leanne. There is a podcast called True Crime Broads. I've heard of it. Who covered Missy's murder. One of the ladies was friends with Missy. From what I understand, the church was always locked. Dallas is very close by. Okay. Like I said, I'd like to know why it was locked. Kathy, Missy usually conducted her class in the parking lot, had to go inside because of the weather. Yeah, and I'm guessing, Kathy, this is probably not the first morning that it rained. This isn't Las Vegas where it rains 5 times a year. So I'm guessing that she probably did conduct other classes inside because it had rained before that on other days, other weeks. So, and I do remember that being said, Cap. So coming up on 9 years, it's one of those murders where I think everybody's perception was that, well, this is going to be solved pretty quickly. I mean, they got the video, they got this, they got that, they know the murder weapon, they have this video as Rockford brought out this card, everything. This is going to get solved in no time. And here we're coming up on 9 years. I would have thought that they would have been able to track that person down simply on the strength of, the police gear that was being worn. Because I'm going to guess that person didn't go out and get that gear like a year before that. My guess is that gear was bought if only a couple weeks before the murder happened. And I'm guessing there is some sort of police gear expert who could look at what was being worn and being able to track down what manufacturer it was and all of that. Man, you would think with that all put together, that would really, really, really narrow things down. Obviously, it has not. Marty says, I'm sure she conducted other classes inside if the weather is bad. You can't teach in the parking lot. True. Mary Jo, my Catholic church is locked unless there's a service, choir practice, or meeting. It's in a high crime area and has been broken into. Well, there you go. By the way, I don't think Missy was targeted. Marty, that looked like airsoft gear, not real tactical gear. All right. Still same thing. You'd think it'd be able to be tracked down, Marty. Deborah says, I believe the killer is female. There are reasons to think that, I guess, Deborah. Kathy, perpetrator broke in before Missy came in. That's right, Kathy. All right. So that is my Missy Beavers coverage tonight. I'm guessing that when we get to April, so some months from now, that I'll probably bring it up again, if only for the reason I'm sure there will be 1 or 2 articles in Texas written about it. Kathy says, I believe person is male because of how she was killed. All right. Both arguments can be made. And given that the population seems to be split on what the gender of the killer is, probably could lead us to believe that is exactly what the killer wanted. The killer's going to break in there. The killer doesn't want anyone to know, wants to be as vague about gender as possible. I do not think that that is a coincidence. I think that that was planned. Because really, I mean, think about all of the crimes that we've all seen on video. All you have to do is, of course, go, be here on YouTube, and you can see all sorts of crimes from video. How many times are you really, really, really questioning the gender of the perpetrator? Hardly ever. But here we are, and overtly so. So because of that, I have to think that this was this person's idea in the first place, even if the person didn't know that Missy was going to be showing up at the church that morning. Ferry says, it was such a brazen attack. If they were to rob it, they could have run out the back instead of attacking her. Maybe. Don't know that, the issue, Ferry, is we don't know exactly what transpired in there once the killer goes off camera. The police know, and in fact, I've heard that there's actually video of Missy being killed. Although, of course, that's never been made public. We don't know what goes on. The public doesn't know what went on after, the video stops. The police do. So, was there a reason? Did Missy did she hear something and start walking that direction or something? We don't know. I think perceptually, theoretically, I think you're right, Ferry. It does seem possible that this killer could have left and not killed Missy at all, theoretically. The problem is there's a bit of time in there where we, the public, don't know what the facts are. Did Missy see the killer coming? How long was the fight? Was the killer successful in creeping up on Missy and Missy didn't know what hit her? Don't know. Rockford, it has to be one of those out of the blue suspects, maybe a first timer. Aaron Stoner has done a lot on the case and even named a suspect, which seems a little risky for a couple reasons. Rockford, I remember early on that a lot of people were focused on a couple in the area, and the guy knew Missy somehow, maybe through working out or yoga or something like that. I remember, that's about all I remember when it comes to suspects, Rockford. Marty, airsoft gear is manufactured for general public, made to look real but not real. I think it would be hard to track something like that down. All right, Marty. Ferry, I think you are the only one I've heard say it was connected to the church. Well, that's interesting, Ferry. It seems to me that there are others here, though, in the chat tonight that say the same thing, Ferry. So I'm not saying it's the majority opinion out there, but my perception is that, this isn't, when it comes to theories, was she targeted, wasn't she targeted? It's not like 90% to 10%. I think it's more like 60-40. I think maybe I may be in the minority, but I'm in a minority that might be like 40% of the population when they start thinking about this. So that's interesting, Ferry. Clarice, this was a set to make it look organic. Someone had it out for Missy. All right, Clarice. Hello, Jill. What's going on, Jill? Marty, I think there's a lot more information the police are letting us know about this case. If so, Marty, I'd wish they'd just solve it then. Kathy, I've watched Aaron Stoner's videos about this killer too. Brian, killer wanted to protect his or her identity by wearing all that gear. True. Totally right, Brian. Even to the point that we can't tell what the gender is. And that's rare. I mean, like I said, all of us here, if you're in this chat tonight watching me on a Monday night, you're into true crime. And so I know you've watched a lot of videos. And we know how rare it is to see a crime committed and not know what the gender is. Whether it's just the sticking up of a 7-Eleven. Usually you can tell pretty fast. Of course, it's usually men, but sometimes women. But there's never any question of whether it's man or woman. This is. So we have to start thinking this was part of a plan. Leanne, Midlothian PD is not seasoned in murder investigations. I thought for sure it would have been solved right after it happened. Supposedly they plan to use AI next. I don't know how AI is going to solve that. Don't know. In Rockford, if you can say, please do not type the name in the chat, Rockford. But what is the connection that Aaron Stoner tried to make as far as a suspect? But once again, don't name any names, please. Hello, Stephanie. What's going on with you? All right, let's move on to this. And like I said, I want to avoid the political angle of this. All right. But when you have what we would call a terrorist attack in New Orleans, and then you have a truck blown up, I don't care if it's a Tesla or not, blown up at the Trump Tower in Las Vegas, and that was built while I was there. You know, it's hard to talk about this stuff without talking about the politics of it, but I'm going to do that because I want to look at this from a totally different angle. And this is something that I've been saying to my buddy Dave for a long time. Of course, Dave, some of you know him. I've mentioned him before. In fact, I just got together with him while I was in Pennsylvania, he and his wife and his sons. We had a great time. I've known Dave for over 30 years. We went to college together. And this is something that I have mentioned to him privately before. And now I want to mention it here. And it has to do with military vets and crime. I find myself increasingly becoming worried and bothered about it. You can almost guess it now. That when you hear, now granted, a lot of non-vets are doing this stuff too. But when you start looking about these big crimes that we've had in the United States last 25 years, how many of them have been committed by military veterans, at least American U.S. military veterans? Many. Way more than you would expect from the general population. You have to remember, Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City, 1995. Military vet. John Muhammad, of course, with his son or adopted son, or with Lee, whatever his name was. John Muhammad. Of course, the DC sniper case. Military vet. And both of these guys who did this, Timothy McVeigh, right? Amy, military vet. DC sniper, military vet. Both of the guys on New Year's Eve, the guy that drove his truck down Bourbon Street and the guy who blew himself up in Las Vegas, both military vets. We have the Fort Hood shooter. Of course, that happened on a military base. So once again, we have another military vet. What is going on here? Now, I realize, given that Clarice and I were just talking about this in the first hour, I realize that there is a PTSD factor here. And it does seem that the guy who blew himself and his truck up and, of course, injured people, fortunately, he was the only person who was killed. It seems that he did have some things going on. He left a note behind. It seems that was he having a relationship problem or something like that. It seemed like he had been struggling with some depression and things for years. Very sad. But then even with that, though, we have to start thinking, what is the difference? Because let's think about it this way. Think about World War II. 1941 and 1945, at least for the United States. How many military members did we have? I mean, that was the largest, that was the largest that the American military has ever been between 1941 and 45 for obvious reasons. A lot of those guys, of course, they're mostly men, went to Europe, went over into the Pacific. If they came home, if they survived, they survived. But how many of them actually had to dodge bullets? Many. How many had to avoid stepping on landmines? Many. How many had to avoid getting bombed? How many had to avoid kamikaze attacks? Many, 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 many. Many. A lot of people died during World War II. But how many of them came home and ended up attacking their fellow American citizens? Granted, the way we generally, at least now, look at the late 1940s into the 50s, I think that we kind of look back at the time as Americans with rose-colored glasses. Whereas I like to remind everybody, the good old days, what they called the good old days back end? They just called them days. And really, the good old days were actually the bad old days. But how many of them came back, ended up blowing themselves up and injuring, if not killing, injuring other people? How many of them took a vehicle, a 1953 Chevy, and drove down some street and killed a bunch of people? How many? My guess is, although I've never done any stats on this, I've never looked this up, my perception on this is that this seems to be a new thing in American culture. That there was a time when Americans would go off to fight in wars, and they come home, and of course, as has been made the point many, many times, a lot of those military members, like from the World War II, of course, they're all dying. And I read the last guy who was at Pearl Harbor who survived. He just died recently. Those people never even talked about their military experience. They came back from Europe and from, the Pacific and never even talked about it. They went back to whatever they were doing. They got on with their lives. Never, met somebody, got married, had kids, never talked about their military, experience at all. Maybe they didn't want to talk it because it was so bad. I get it. Never in the military. I get it. But something has changed. And, what compounds my frustration about this and me being perplexed about this is that back then, when those guys would come back from, I'll just keep using World War II. they didn't get any sort of mental help. There were no psychiatrists that were open to them, and they could go down to the local office VA building and talk to them about their problems and the bad thoughts they talking about seeing their really good buddies get killed, die right beside them and everything. There was nothing like that back then. And in fact, if you even come up more recently, I don't even think that we had this during Vietnam. Once again, this whole thing about trying to help military members with their PTSD and, of course, PTSD has been, had a lot of different, used to shell-shocked, battle fatigue. It's lived under a lot of different names over the years, but it's all the same thing. It's all stress and depression brought on by being in life-threatening situations over and over and over and over again. And on top of that, going out into the field every day, not knowing whether you're going to live or not. That's where that all comes from. And it doesn't matter if it's a Civil War where they're using muskets, or in the 21st century where they're using AR-15s, it's all the same. The brain processes it the same way. The difference, my perception, is that military vets today are more likely to use that to everybody else's detriment. Or if we want to look at the New Orleans guy, he's in the American military, then somehow gets flipped to hating the United States and doing what he did to kill a bunch of his fellow Americans. And like I said, I'm not getting into politics and the religious side of this. All I want to do is stick to, what I'm talking about. What is going on with this? Why is this happening? It seems, and I realize that, I see the stories too over the last 25 years. In fact, they did a Law and Order episode several years ago on it about bad VA conditions. I'm not happy about that, but you have to remember that there was a time when nothing like that existed at all. There was no help for military veterans. They came home, and if they lost a leg, they lost an arm, they lost this, they lost that. Oh, well, tough. That's the way it goes. And now we have all these new facilities, and we have the Wounded Warrior Project and all these 501c3s and everything. And it seems things are getting worse, not better. Like I said, I realized that most people are going to see that news from New Year's Eve, and they're automatically, once again, they're going to go to the political side of this. Well, that guy blew himself up at the Trump Tower because he hates Trump. And in fact, that wasn't the situation at all. It sounds like this guy actually voted for Donald Trump. Once again, not to get into the politics. But a lot of people jump to that conclusion, even though it's not true. But, I get it. Jumping to a conclusion, it would make sense. Somebody goes and blows a truck up by Trump Tower. You'd think this would be a person who doesn't like that Trump is going to be president again. No, it's the opposite. Go figure. Likewise, when you hear about a terrorist on purpose taking a truck, and I realize the blockade, the thing was supposed to be on, was supposed to block everything. It didn't. I'm not here to get into that. Drives down there, killed how many people? You're automatically thinking, well, this has to be somebody from another country. This has to be a non-American citizen. That has to be somebody who was trained in some ISIS camp or something somewhere. No. American citizen, military vet. What's going on? And this is, like I said, there have been many situations like this where we have had military members who went in. Remember, our military is all volunteer. These are people who chose to go into the military at some point. Served. Might have even dodged bullets. Did this, did that. was in for several years. I heard this guy was like in the military for 10 years. He gets out and then turns around and decides the country that at one point I was defending, I'm now going to kill my fellow citizens in that same country. You would think when you're in the military that you would become even more hardened against changing your ideas. You would think. Whereas I think on the other hand, if you let's just do a stereotype. Some kid who's living in his basement, let's just say he's not the most ambitious type. It would seem that type of person would be more likely to flip for whatever reason, cruising around the internet at 3 a.m. and running into the wrong people. And these people can talk him into doing something, being violent. That would seem perceptually to be more likely than what we see. It's just, once again, I've never been in the military and everything. It's just hard for me to understand. Going back to Missy Bevers, Rockford says, if I recall correctly, Stoner believes he got a good enough look at the driver to make a positive ID based on some sort of facial recognition technique. Video available on YouTube and worth it. All right, I'll have to look that up. Everybody maybe wants to go look that up. Rodney says, nowadays when they come back, they just get put on antidepressant drugs. That's a big reason. It very well may be, Rodney. And the issue, of course, those drugs works for some people, but they can be very dangerous too. And I think we've seen that on Unfound just with the disappearances that we've featured. It's one of those things where the drugs work until they don't work. And the drugs work one time, and then the next time it sends people off, their minds off in a totally different direction. It's taking antidepressant drugs is not like taking an antibiotic. It's just not the same. And even I know with what I've been going through over the last month, and I'm going to get into that in, the next topic before we finish tonight, Insomnia, Disappearances. That's the same thing when it comes to Ambien and Trazodone and all these things. Yeah, they work. And sometimes they don't work. And sometimes they do what they're supposed to do. And sometimes they do the opposite. Like I said, it's not like taking an antibiotic. You take an antibiotic, it's going to probably kill that infection in you. It's not going to make the infection worse. Kelly, thank you so much. Kelly, you are very generous. Kelly, thank you so much for that super chat contribution tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. You're very generous. Stephanie, I think that the more it happens, the more it becomes a thing that happens. In my opinion, the chance of someone replicating such a crime is more likely when it's fresh in a troubled person's mind. It very well may be true, Stephanie. The problem is these stories have to be covered. I realize that there is a thinking out there, well, we can't name these people. We shouldn't name these killers. Whether it comes to terrorist attacks or school shootings, we shouldn't name these people. I get that. But it's the story itself that drives people. And we can't not cover these stories. We can't not cover a bunch of people getting killed in New Orleans on New Year's Eve. That story has to be covered. So it very well may be that then we just have to live with that. Rockford, theory, take a kid from public high school in 1940, put him in the Army. Probably not a crazy adjustment. Try that now, and it's a radical change. The post-military readjustment may be the key. It very well may be, Rockford, except we have to remember, in 1940, you're getting drafted. Whereas we have an all-volunteer army in the United States. Now, I will admit, once again, I've never been in the military, never even thought about it. I don't think that I would have been a very good person in the military. I'm too independent. I don't like taking orders from people. I can be a very disciplined person within myself. I guess is what I'm saying. But these are people who are choosing, they're choosing to go into the military, and then this happens. Whereas if you're being forced to do it, and there certainly are countries where there is force, like Israel. Everybody is, even Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman. She served for 2 years in the Israeli military, whatever. That's not what's going on here. So I get that the culture has certainly changed since 1940 till now. But the way we treat the military and the way the people get into the military and everything and where it is different. In addition, I will admit this isn't so political. It very well may be that we are getting some people in the American military that we shouldn't, because the incentives are wrong. What's one of the big incentives that the Army uses, the military uses in the United States to get people to sign up? Free education. The GI Bill. That could cause us to get people into the military who otherwise would never think about doing it. And is that what we really want? So that very well could be a factor. And that topic did kind of come up, with the first Gulf War and then the War on Terror in the 2000s. You have a volunteer army. Well, a lot of people in that volunteer army are signed up because they really never thought they'd have to dodge bullets. And now they're being sent to Afghanistan and Iraq. This is an issue. Whereas back in 1940, to use your example, Rockford, first of all, there was a draft, and there was no doubt about what was going to be happening. You're getting drafted, you're going in there, and there's no expectations outside of just serving your time and then getting the heck out. Whereas I think what we've done over the last 50 years with the GI Bill, or more than that, is you get a bunch of people in there who are just trying to get eventually get out and get a free education, not thinking they have to dodge bullets, and then they have to. And that could create issues. It could create PTSD and things. Could. But I am troubled by this. I guess what I'm also saying is that, you aren't getting, if we're to look at other parts of American culture, even though we make fun of it, these aren't postal worker. We used to remember where the saying "going postal" comes from. That's not even a thing anymore. These aren't postal workers who are doing this, going and blowing themselves up at the Trump Tower, or doing a terrorist attack. These aren't, retired employees from the Department of the Interior who are doing these, other departments in the federal government. No, it comes exclusively from one particular group, military vets. Now, I realize a lot of non-military vets are doing these things too, but it does seem that it's an inordinate amount of military vets who are doing these things. What is going on? I don't know. Marty says, I just think different times are to follow different aspects and mindsets when it comes to mental health compared to early 1900s and now. I agree with that, Marty. The issue, Marty, though, is there's more help than ever now. There's more help than ever now. And in fact, you can get help right over the computer now, whether it has to do with insomnia or whatever else. Now I realize long way to go. I realize a lot of complaints about American healthcare, but we also have to remember there was a point in American history where there was nothing. People, Civil War, World War I, World War II, these veterans came back, dodging bullets, getting arms blown off and everything else. And I don't think this kind of stuff was happening. Here in the 21st century, we have a huge VA administration. We have billions of dollars being thrown at it. We have all sorts of counselors and psychologists and support groups and everything else, and still we have military members who have depression and kill themselves, kill others, and we even have to the point where they're flipping and going to work for the enemy. Clarice, I'm speaking from experience. There's no follow-up care after deployments for these vets today. In 25, it's still not enough. Yeah. No. Yeah, I'm speaking. There's no follow-up care after deployments for these vets today. In 25, it's still not enough. I got you, Clarice. Like I said, I realize no system is perfect. I'm just wondering what's changed. From then till now. I mean, and like I said, as you know, I don't really follow political news that much. And I stay out of all of that. I really don't give a dang one way or the other. I'm going to be fine no matter who's president, who's running the Congress or whatever else. I'm going to be fine. But I don't see this part of it being talked about. When I do hear these stories from Christmas Eve or from New Year's Eve. What is going on with these people? Yes, but it's different. Back in the day, many were locked in asylums. Today, many mentally ill individuals are getting help in society, which is great because they shouldn't be stigmatized, but it's not enough outreach. Clarice says, Stephanie, could it be that mentally ill people were institutionalized a lot back in the days when mental health care wasn't really available and a lot wasn't yet understood? Could be, but I'm a little bit of a World War II buff. How many World War II vets came back from their deployment and ended up getting sent to mental institutions because of what had happened? I'm going to guess the number is very, very low. So what made those mainly men be able to deal with the issues that they experienced in combat? And what has made it today seemingly, perceptually, that more vets cannot handle that? And we also have to remember something else. As a percentage, way, way, way more military vets dodged bullets in World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam than they ever did in the first Iraq War and the War on Terror. So conceivably, all those older military vets saw way more worse things than the ones that have today, but it's the ones from 70, 80 years ago that seemingly found a way to deal with it in their own personal ways, whereas today it just doesn't seem so. Rodney, there was no social media back then, way more online propaganda now. That might have something to do with it. Could be. Don't know. It's just something that's been on my mind since New Year's Eve. Clarice, they didn't deal with it. We just didn't hear about it. Social media makes it much more pressing. Marty, also, how many World War II vets were in two slides? We don't know because it wasn't publicized as much. Families would hide the fact family members came back with mental illnesses. Media didn't report it as much. The thing is, the thing is, Marty, we can suspect that. I don't know if there's any facts to support that. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm going to guess a few did, but I also know, there have been a lot of World War II get-togethers, and I realize we're losing our World War II vets every day, and we're going to get to a time here soon we'll have no World War II vets. They'll all be dead. Very sad. But you look at all of these World War II get-togethers that they've had over the last 60 years, a lot of people showed up. So how many really got, sense to institutions and everything else. I don't know. Sarah, there are too many mental ill people and not enough therapists who take insurance. There are long waiting lists for appointments. Yeah. I guess what we have to add into this is that it doesn't seem like other countries have this issue. So there's that too. Just something that's on my mind. Wanted to run it by all of you tonight. I know that's not something that it's a kind of an, I don't know how odd it is, a unique topic to talk about, because this is what we do. Disappearances, we think that a majority of them, at least, some crime has been committed, most likely a felony, most likely murder. And so we do crime here. We're here to analyze crime, and these were crimes. Why do they happen? Why did they happen? Why are these people doing these things? Why are people who are in probably the most respected group in all of American culture doing these things? You can't go to a sporting event without the military, some military group, a member being recognized. We have flyovers that all these bowl games and the Super Bowl and baseball games and everything else, they get recognition over and over. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but what is going wrong here? Deborah, it's easier to pawn off the mentally ill to our prisons than give them free help. Yeah. How many military vets end up in prison? I don't know that. I'm sure the stats are out there. I don't know. It's like I said, we're trying to analyze crime here, why these things are happening, and people who chose to go into the military, they get out. And like I said, you look at Tim McVeigh, military vet, chose to blow up the building in Oklahoma City. Does he do that if he's never in the military? John Muhammad, military vet. Does he ever become the DC sniper if he's never in the military? That's the other way we have to think about this. Does this guy who drove his truck, it wasn't his truck, a truck that he rented, he drove down Bourbon Street and killed all those people, does he do that if he's never in the American military? Now, I realize he had a conversion. I'm not here to get into the religious side of this. I'm sticking to the military side of this. I don't know. Let's move on to this. This might be the last Stephanie. Maybe it could also be that there's more isolation for vets today. Whole towns were drafted and then they came back and lived alongside others with the same experience. Maybe, Stephanie. It's something to contemplate. Maybe. I want to move on to this. Insomnia, disappearances. As you can imagine, over the past month, I've tried to find some positive aspects of what has been going on with me. And I have to admit, it's been a little difficult. But something that has popped up in my head is, could some of Unfound's disappearances be due to sleeping issues or people taking some sort of sleep medication? Because we get so caught up. My fault, not yours. We get so caught up when we're talking about drugs. What are we usually talking about? We're usually talking about illegal drugs, or we're talking about drugs like opioids that people become addicted to. They're legal, but they become addicted to them, and then these people start breaking the law to get their hands on more money or more opioids, and they have an addiction, and it continues on and on. Very common topics on the podcast over the past 8 years. But now that I've been, dealing with this for the past month, over a month now, and like I said, I want to remind all of you, it continues to get a little better. And I'm hoping starting next Monday with some counseling that I'm getting. We just got through talking about people getting counseling and everything. Some counseling that I'm just going to start next Monday. We've left out sleep drugs, because I'm not taking any, and the reason I haven't taken any is because I have been reading up about them. And I know that certainly there are a lot of people who will go to bat for these drugs and say, man, Ambien and Trazodone and all these many, both over the counter and prescription, man, they helped me so much. Couldn't sleep. Man, I took one of those, and man, it helped me out. Now, unfortunately, those what we're talking about here can be addictive too. But, when we start talking about walk-off disappearances, and we start thinking about the disappearances that have been featured on Unfound, we're pretty sure it wasn't foul play. We're pretty sure this person just walked off all on his own or her own, and it's hard to understand. Could we have been missing something this whole time? And maybe I even talked about this last week with Chris Sanders, but I'm going to bring it up again. Could some of these people, I know this is going to sound totally out of left field, but I think this is actually based in science. Could some of these people who walked off actually have been sleepwalking? That they weren't choosing to walk off. It was the mind working on its own. And, I started thinking about this idea back a month ago when I almost ended up taking Ambien. I never did, and I'm very happy that I didn't. Ambien works for a lot of people. And in fact, I don't know if Dave would mind me saying this, but my buddy Dave, who I already mentioned once again tonight, when he would go overseas for business some years ago, his company actually got him a prescription to Ambien because you take it as soon as you get on the plane, because of the big time differences flying to Europe or whatever. You take it this time, and when you wake up, if you take it at the right time, you'll wake up and it'll be like you slept on the time that you're going, and you won't get that jet lag. Ambien is then used to get over jet lag, and he said he never had any problems with it. Fine by me. But I also know that there's another side to Ambien. This is just one example. It's called a hypnotic, and there are other drugs like Ambien, and certainly there are even ones that are stronger than it is, and they all work in different ways. There's all sorts of, as I've learned, there's all sorts of different sleep drugs. There's a big, classification called sleep drugs, but within that, there's these little groups of how they're made and what they actually do to your mind and how they knock you out and everything else. They're not all the same. They just all don't have different names. It's the difference between like Tylenol and Advil and aspirin and everything else. They're all pain medications, but their chemical makeup is very different. And how they stop pain, stop you from feeling pain, is in different ways. But the thing about Ambien is, as I've learned, and you can see right away how the drug could cause disappearances. The thing about Ambien is that, it's not like, what would, if you're going to take Ambien, what they say, what the suggestion is you take it when you're already in bed. So it's not one of these drugs where, okay, you're up, you're doing some things, you're doing a little reading. Okay, I'm planning to go to bed in 20 minutes, so I'm going to take that Ambien now. Don't do that. Don't do that. If anybody's ever going to think about if you have to get on Ambien for some reason, you have to everything, don't do that. Because what's going to happen is it's going to knock you out before you ever get to your bed. And probably what's going to happen is your body will continue to work. And there are all sorts of stories out there of people taking Ambien before they actually get into bed. And they find out later that they've been up, that they've been washing clothes, they've been watching TV, they've been doing all of these things, and they have no memory of any of it. See, that's what scared me about Ambien. I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. I'll tough it out, as I've done for the last month. And that's what happens. So if you're going to take Ambien, you're in bed, you're under the covers, you take it, and that's what's going to work. Anything else, you're really risking some big time problems. There's stories of people taking Ambien and actually going down to their cars and driving around during the night. Don't even remember doing it. That's why it's called a hypnotic. So as you can imagine, when I start hearing about this, now, of course, I've known about Ambien for decades, however long it's been out. But, I've never had any interest in it, never had any interest in taking it, never had to, and still haven't taken it, but I was like this close. And you can see how that kind of situation would cause disappearances. Easily. You can easily see it. And that's why, when we think about Chris Sanders and his disappearance, being that I mentioned him last week, or within the last few weeks, when I talked to a woman who's going to be doing a podcast in Texas about his disappearance, what did he do? He walked out to his truck, opened it up, the alarm went off, seemingly got something out of his truck. The alarm was still going off. He leaves the door open and walks down the highway. What does that sound like? It sounds like sleepwalking. Something that I would admit, I don't remember thinking this. Something when we covered his disappearance way back in 2019, I guess it would have been, never even thought about it. Because what do we think about? Our minds automatically go to the illegal stuff or to the addictive pain medication, everything. We don't think about sleep med. And it doesn't even have to be Ambien. It could be a lot of different things. But you think about that. I really didn't put a list in my notes tonight, but I'm sure that I could go through my through the entire listing, 350, 60 episodes, and pick out ones where, in retrospect, maybe we have to consider that these people were sleepwalking, that they really didn't know what they were doing, that they really didn't choose to leave their homes or wherever they were, that they took something. They weren't trying to kill themselves. They weren't trying to disappear or anything. They didn't have an addiction, but they took something, and that is how it affected them. It's just something. No meds. Taya D says, Sebastian Rogers was on sleep meds. Was he? I didn't know that, D, but that does add an aspect to Sebastian's disappearance. I can't deny that. Muted Grouse says, not only in bed, but when the lights are out and your eyes are closed. Right. Being in bed might not be enough for Ambien. Lights out, your eyes are closed. Otherwise, you risk doing all sorts of weird things. Yes, Muted. Thank you for expounding on that. Sarah says, driving it. Yeah. I'm serious. There are stories out there about that. People taking Ambien, taking it at the wrong time, taking it, as Muted said, when they're not in bed and the lights aren't out and their eyes aren't closed. But they take it, they're sitting out on their couch thinking, I'm going to bed in 15 minutes. I might as well take that Ambien now. And hours later, they come out of the stupor and they're in their car. True story, Sarah. True story. No, Ambien is prescription, Deborah. And in fact, it's not only a prescription, Deborah, but it is a controlled substance. Yeah, it makes you think, D. Marcus. I don't think so. I believe you. Yeah, it's just not a prescription. Yeah, it's a controlled substance. It doesn't even need to be medication. My sister sleptwalked down the road when we were kids. Well, sleepwalking certainly exists, Muted. I mean, people can sleepwalk without being on drugs, certainly. And that is a sleep problem. That's, once again, something that that's not something that should ever be accepted. If you have anybody who you love in your life who sleepwalks, they need sleep help. They need to go get that handled. That's dangerous. Yeah, Deborah. Yeah. So it's just something that has been on my mind. Insomnia, disappearances. I really think that this is something that I've missed. I realize it's probably just a very small part of the overall disappearance situation in the world. But when we start hearing about some of these weird stories, like the one we didn't cover it on Unfound because it was solved, but the disappearance of the guy, I think that Heather Grotman did that blog some years ago. The guy who was in Texas, he went missing on Super Bowl Sunday, and then just a few days later, he got hit by a car in the state of Washington. In retrospect, that sounds like some sort of drug-induced state. Legal drugs, not illegal drugs. That's what it sounds like to me. Now, Amelie, my bum took one Ambien and fell asleep standing up with her head and chest on the bed. She doesn't even remember walking from the bathroom to her bed. She will never take it again. Thank goodness she didn't fall. Exactly, Amelie. Right. Because I think what's going on with Ambien is that you don't realize that, part of your mind is awake and part of your mind is asleep. Something like that. But it's called a hypnotic for a reason. I'm not making it up. There is a brand, there is a classification of drugs called hypnotics. Deborah, I sleepwalk, woke up outside getting really, really close to the highway. My dog woke me up, pulling me on my nightgown. Rockford says, David Glenn Lewis, wild story. Yeah, that's the guy, right? Rockford, that went missing on Super Bowl Sunday, and then he got hit by a car 1,500 miles away just a couple days later, and nobody knows how he even got up there. It's something that I'm going to really, really have to study once I really, really get back into all of this. But for all of you, I think this is something that should be on all of your radars too. If you go to the Charlie Project or NamUs or Web Sleuths, you might just want to open up the door a little bit to the idea, could some of these people have taken some sort of sleep medication and walked off not knowing what they're doing? Because what do we get so caught up in? This person walked off because they were suicidal. This person walked off because he was high. I guess, if you're high, I guess you're kind of high if you're on sleep medication, I guess. This person walked off because this person was in the process of overdosing. But I know for me, I've never contemplated seriously on any of the disappearances yet. Did this person walk off because this person was sleepwalking? I got to put that on the list. So that's what I mean by insomnia disappearances. And I guess the tough thing about them is that anybody would be able to do this. Anybody. Somebody who's a non-drinker, non-smoker, non-drug user could take one of these drugs, and that's the way it affected them. Sarah says, after what I've learned from you today, Ed, I will never take Ambien. Yeah. Well, it has a time and a place, Sarah. You will find a lot of people who continue to take it and swear by it. And even in the program that I'm using, the guy who started it, who's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, his name is Dr. Michael Perlis. I've listened to a couple podcasts that he's been on over the years talking about this. He is a believer in drugs, sleep drugs to help, but only at the beginning and very forcefully, and very supervised. Instead, what goes on, Sarah, and the reason so many of these people get into these problems is because they don't get counseled on the drug. They don't know how powerful it is. It's not being that well supervised. They're treating it like some sort of antibiotic. Well, I just take an antibiotic anytime I want. And so it's a time and a place, supervised, with the understanding of, there's a plan. It's just not, well, I'm just going to give you a pill. Here you go. Here's your Ambien for tonight. Rockford, when a drug-related but sleepwalking was prominent theory in Ash's degree case, I don't buy it, but the case for it is respectable. The name is familiar, but that's about it, Rockford. Just say no to Ambien. Stephanie, glad you'll be trying a CBT for your insomnia. Best of luck with it. Thank you, Stephanie. So, hey, I'm always here to give you guys things to think about. There's one more thing. Just a couple more things. I guess I am making it to 11 o'clock. I got a bunch of Steve Pankey letters while I was in Pennsylvania. I've not opened them yet. Like I said, I keep saying it, but within the next month or something, I'm guessing that my interview with the Silver Linings Playbook podcast is going to be coming out. And I continue to say I'm going to be very interested to hear how I sound there, because that was right at the beginning of my sleep problems. And I can remember doing that interview and thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to get through this. I don't know what I'm going to sound like. I'll admit to all of you, I don't really remember. I think it was a great interview, but some of it is a haze. So we'll see. The Dr. T show for this month in January is not going to happen because of a schedule conflict, not with me, but I think with her. Something's going on there. So we were supposed to do a show on the 16th of January. That's not going to happen. And one more thing. It turns out that maybe John Van Cise, the guy friend of Jody Hustentrut, he might not be dead. That might have been some sort of urban legend. And Caroline Lowe and I had a conversation about that today. Somebody might have jumped the gun on John Van Cise's death. So I know I spoke about that last week, but it might not be true. Marcus says, I was wondering if anyone has heard of the disappearance of Simone Reidinger. She disappeared. Name is maybe familiar, Marcus, but that's about it. As for this Friday, while the podcast is on hiatus, this Friday will be the original episode for the disappearance of Rose Marie Gayhart. I'll just read the intro to you. Rosemary Gayhart was a 23-year-old native New Yorker who moved to Cape Coral, Florida with her boyfriend. She had a large family with many siblings who cared about her and were concerned with her moving away. On March 14th, 1985, somebody in a red pickup truck allegedly picked her up after work. She was never seen again. That will be the episode for this Friday. This is another one that we've never revisited it. And I have to admit, my fault, but I really don't know how much Rose, her name, and her disappearance has come up over the past 8 years since the episode, her episode came out. but her sister was the guest. This is like the third, the fourth or fifth disappearance that Unfound ever covered. So if you've not listened to it yet, you'll be hearing it this Friday. Rosemarie Gayhart, 23-year-old, went missing from Cape Coral, Florida on March 14th of 1985. So that's it for tonight. This is a high quality show tonight. I heard a lot about sleeping issues and PTSD issues, or military members being violent, and Missy Bevers and Insomnia disappearances. You don't get this anywhere else. So that's it for tonight. Thank you all. I'm doing fine, continuing to fight the good fight here, trying to get back to my old self as quickly as possible. I'm trying to keep in mind that song by the band Tesla, called Hang Tough. I'm hanging tough here. So there you go. And thank you, all those people who are very generous through the super chat button tonight. Thank you so much. Good night.